බොහොම ස්තුතියි ඔබ සැම ආමන්ත්‍රණය කර ජාතික අධ්‍යාපන කමිෂන් සභාවේ සභාපති පත්මිනී රණවීර මහත්මියට මෙලන්ට මා ආරාධනා කරනවා ඉතාමත් සුවිශේෂී සහ කෙටි අදහස් දැක්වීමක් සඳහා ශ්‍රී ලංකා තොරතුරු තාක්ෂණ විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයේ නියෝජ්‍ය උපකුලපති මහාචාර්ය නිමල් රාජපක්ෂ මහත්මයාණනි ඔබතුමාට
Thank you very much, Ms. Ranavira, for your valuable thoughts. And next, we extend our warm invitation for the Professor Nimal Rajapaksha, Deputy Vice Chancellor of Sri Lanka Institute of Information Technology, the SLIT. Sir, this is over to you. You might have thoughts on this discussion to share with us.
Good morning, everyone. Actually, I was not prepared for this speech. It was a last-minute request. I decided to accept it. I must say that my experience with education in Sri Lanka is very limited. I'm a graduate of University of Moratuwa, and in 1979 I left Sri Lanka to pursue graduate studies and returned only in 2019. So 40 years I was away. I worked in Canada for 37 years in the university system there as a professor as well as a university administrator. I was a dean, vice president, and so on. So I will actually share some of the things that I have learned and seen in Canada, which may be also very relevant to this discussion. And first and foremost, what I want to say is that in the education system there, I would say it's not just the good citizen that they make, but also I would phrase it as responsible citizen. A citizen who is also accountable to society. And also education comes with a lot of outcomes. And for example, from the very early age, I had 2 sons and both of them actually born and raised there. So when they were in the primary school, I used to see what they are doing. And it's very different from the education that you find in Sri Lanka, where we have a lot of focus on examinations. And students are very much stressed. And now actually today, the scholarship exam has become a real disaster to a grade 5 student. And you don't have to go through that kind of stress in the developed system. So it doesn't matter what percentage of income you actually, GDP you allocate to the country, right? If there are fundamental problems, right, we should also look at how to fix them. So students, they are more free to think. They know how to integrate knowledge. As a university professor, I would say a student coming to the university there are far more matured than a student in Sri Lanka. This is not a criticism, but I am just sharing you with my own experience. They start working when they are about in grade 9. If they can't find anything, they will go and sell actually lemonade during the summertime. And that actually gives them the responsibility. The responsibility and also to be accountable. And these are the things I think from primary level that we should also develop in our system. I think we do very well in terms of the content. If you look at actually Sri Lankan students, I followed the math stream, so I can tell them that they can solve differential equations very well. Any hard differential equation, our students can actually solve. But if you ask them to take that equation and apply to something, there is a big problem. Or if you phrase a question which is not actually just directly solving an equation, but relate it to a practical problem, right? They can't see that connection. So these are fundamental things that actually we need to change in our education system. And I will talk a little later about Professor Harendra is also here, and we have been talking about these things quite some time, about the idea of actually how we can introduce more project-based learning or problem-based learning. I mean, in certain disciplines like medicine and engineering, I'm an engineer, these ideas are very well developed, where instead of actually just delivering content to students and asking them to memorize and master that content, right? It is actually looking at how you take the content, integrate them, and how you apply to solve problems, right? Because this will become actually very important, because most of you are aware that there is a revolution taking place with respect to artificial intelligence. I don't know how many of you have used ChatGPT, right? So if you look at ChatGPT, which will make actually the traditional knowledge, the way we know, is basically useless in about another 5 years' time. In fact, most of the jobs we do, things like programming, you will not need to actually teach somebody 4 years of programming and do a degree. In fact, you can tell the problem and there will be something that will generate the program for you. So all these roles will change in education, and we will have to align our education system so that these advances in technology, which is going to put the traditional education actually behind the technology advance. So the traditional education will not drive the technology advance, but the technology will actually drive the education. And we have to find that balance in Sri Lanka in terms of education. So these are some thoughts. I have a presentation later. I will talk more about some of these ideas. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and it's great to be a part of this group. Thank you.
ස්තුතියි සමදුව ආමන්ත්‍රණය කර ශ්‍රී ලංකා තොරතුරු තාක්ෂණ විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයේ නියෝජ්‍ය උපකුලපති මහාචාර්ය නිමල් රාජපක්ෂ මැතිතුමනි ඔබතුමන්ට මිලකට අපි සූදානම් වන්නේ තව සුවිශේෂී අදහස් දැක්වීමක් සඳහා ඔබව සම්බන්ධ කරන්නට. ඒ සඳහා මගේ ඇරයුම ජනහද හඳුනන මහජන බැංකුව. මම එහෙම කිව්වේ අපිට ගොඩක් සමීප මේ වැඩ කටයුතුත් එක්ක නිරන්තරයෙන් රැඳී සිටින නිසාවෙන් සමුළුව ආමන්ත්‍රණය කිරීමට ඇරයුම මහජන බැංකුවේ අධ්‍යක්ෂ බැටලි එමර්සන් මහතාට.
Thank you very much, Professor Nimal Rajapaksha, for your thoughts. And next, as you heard in Sinhala, it's time to welcome the guest of honor of today's event. It's none other than Mr. Bradley Emerson, Director of the People's Bank. We would like to ask something for you, sir. This is time to address the gathering.
Thank you. I didn't expect that introduction. I've been there for just 3 months, but I'm more an educationist, a banker. I've been in 3 banks, and I've been with CIMA. I've been in education since 2007. I think it's an honor to be here, and thank you very much for having me. And I think what I want to speak about has a string attached to what Professor Nimal Rajapaksha said. So I have 10 minutes. I might sound radical, and that's my intention too. Because change happens when you think radically. So that's what I intend to do. Education has been a love triangle between the educationists, the students, and the employers. So this has been the history, but then that's no longer a triangle, it's a quadrangle. And the fourth piece of this is entrepreneurship. Indian economy is about $3.5 trillion, and startups contribute to about 10% of that. And is expected to grow to about $1 trillion in 2030. So it's the first time I'm engaging with this group, and I'm deeply honored, and I look forward to working with the professor. Let's start with the why, like Simon Sinek said. What is the why of the education? It has been historically to give knowledge. In the later decades, the why of the education became to provide employability. What is it now? That's where you need to start up. Maybe futuristic education should start by visualizing what the future will look like. Strategy is a subject that I teach. I tell my students, if you want to go forward, first visualize what it will look like. What will the future look like is what we need to start from. If you look at future from where you are, you probably come out with wrong strategies. But if you go to the future and look back, then you probably will look at the right strategies. The stakeholders' perspective has changed. The students you are bringing in to teach are different. I remember in 2009, I had a similar forum led by then Education Minister S.P. Dissanayake. And I said this to them, if you teach the children the way you taught me and my parent, which is happening still, the children would throw the chairs at the teachers, which happened somewhere in October last year. And that's natural. So we need to understand who's coming into class, number one. We are parents here. You don't bring them up the way you were brought up. But why are you teaching them the way you were taught? I ask the same thing from corporate CEOs. You got to teach them differently. You have to manage them differently. You're bringing them up differently. Question number 2, content. We talked about content. Content aligned to what? Future? It is not. We don't know. I worked for 7 years in CIMA, and every 5 years they revise their content. Every 5 years. And how do they do that? They have global workshops, roundtables to talk to CEOs from Cairo to Kathmandu or beyond, from Perth to Los Angeles. Ask them, what do you want a CMA student to look like? Understand the word look like. Do we do that? Do we ask the employers, what do you want our graduates to look like? We don't. So we don't look at that stakeholder perspective. We don't look at the student perspective. So when we have that gap, we can have discussions and discussions. I do not go anywhere. And the other important stakeholder in the education system is the tutor. How much of money do we allocate for teacher development? Finland, the world's #1 education nation, allocates more money, GDP per capita, to teacher development than education. And we don't have that equation here. I remember addressing some teachers when I was in CIMA in Mathura. So the audience, usually typically Sri Lankan, we don't take the front seat. You go to India or even to Bangladesh, that gets filled first in universities. So the teachers took the back bench. I asked them, why are you seated behind? And the response I got from one of the teachers is, we are backbenchers. And my question to them is, what do you produce then? Are we producing people who are compatible, competitive to the world? No. I have spoken to undergraduates from Cairo to Kathmandu, and I'll tell you, you talked about students of Canada. I'm telling you, students of SAC is very advanced in their thought process. So if education is to be futuristic, then our investment in the future need to happen. In the way we teach, in what we teach, and how we assess their learning. We talked about project-based, applied knowledge being assessed. That is why CIMA has moved all their examinations to assignments and case studies. All. We do the same, right? We test memory. I didn't go to university because my memory failed in that moment. That doesn't mean I don't know. This is what you're doing, right? In that moment, you forget and you say you failed. You say you don't know. How unfair is that? We talked about fairness in society. How fair is that? Rather, if you begin to assess them in applied knowledge, then you'll have a better assessment. So future has to be radical. It has to change. And how soon do you pass them out? You are saying 15 years they go into internship. In the 2007 conference, I nearly had chairs thrown at me when I said, reduce the degree program to 2 years. Because years ago, the Federal Secretary for Education in the US said, if you have a 4-year program, by the time you come for the fourth year, you've forgotten, what you learned in the first 2 years is already obsolete. Now, we follow a British system. There are 107 franchise institutions in Sri Lanka which provide you international degrees in 2 years. Why are we wasting the life of our children? Are we ready to cut it down to 2 years? I'm so sorry the Prime Minister or the Education Minister is not here. At least he should have nominated somebody to be here. This is the challenge we have been facing. There's a lot of knowledge outside the policymakers. And the policymakers are deaf and dumb and blind. I'm sorry about this. I'm very disappointed that the government is not present here. It is so sad, and this is the downfall of our system. So the output, timely output, our children are smart. We have said 18 years for maturity, given the education system and the apprehension capacity that was available 5 generations ago. Today's generation, someone like you, are far more apprehensible than I am at your age. So what do you do with education? Employability focused. Do you know what the jobs will be in the future? We don't know. I used to be in CMA, the former question asked, will CMA give a future for our children? I say no. But what CMA will do is prepare your child for the future. Is our education system preparing our children for the future? Adaptive, creative, communicative, problem solving. Then we are all failing as educators, our children. We are all failing. We have failed for decades and we continue to fail. We continue to fail. If we don't change, that's what you were saying in your keynote speech. So this is the time to wake up to ourselves and ask and give up, for God's sake, what we have been doing in the past. Otherwise we will all fail. Education for employment or education for empowerment. My son doesn't want to do A-levels, and I don't blame him. And I asked him, what do you want to do, son? He said, entrepreneurship. I want to start my own business. Do we have a good entrepreneurship program in this country which can be delivered in 2 years and put them out there? Do you have incubators? Look at India. 8% of GDP of 3.5 trillion comes from startups. Where are we? Can you name one? Bhanuka is one. School dropout, $1 million business. How many more are there? How many more Bhanukas are there which we are failing to find? We are failing to find. My daughter, who is 33, is holding the position I was holding when I was 40. She's head of operations, which I was, and she's gone there in like 7 years of work, and I worked for 15 years to get there. Now you see the contraction of competency. If you don't do this, we are failing our duties. If you look at the whole curriculum that is changing, the futuristic, I can give you one example. If you listen to the outgoing Prime Minister of Singapore speaking, he said they are introducing a degree on esports. Now where are we? Where are we? And that's future-based education. So I will leave you with that. I know I sounded pretty radical, but that's the whole intention. Groups of this nature should be self-discovery. We have to learn to give up and walk away from our past. We talked about comfort zones. We have to go out of the comfort zones. The change has to happen from primary to the campus. If it doesn't happen, we fail. Because every generation has a moral obligation to make the next one better. And we in education have not done that. Thank you.